Palestinian Corner from Montreal, and this is our weekly program, our 9th episode. مرحبا وأهلا بكم في ركن فلسطين من مونتريال، وهذه هي حلقتنا التاسعة الأسبوعية. We began with a clip by the Off group of Jerusalem, which was during a celebration of choosing Jerusalem as the capital of the Arab culture. And now with this video clip about the Palestinian Christians, their history, legacy, and struggle for a Palestinian homeland. Welcome back to the Palestinian Corner from Montreal. Our next segment is about the BDS. And here is Grace Batchoun. She's the VP Public Relations for the Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, the group which put the video about the...
Hi, my name is Grace Batchoun. I'm the co-founder and the vice president, Public Relations for Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. Tonight on Facebook, we launched an amazing video to answer all kinds of comments and questions that come out when people...
Simply put, BDS, standing for Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, is a movement used to put economic pressure on Israel to change its policies. But why, you might ask? What has Israel done to deserve to be boycotted? Unfortunately, Israel has been brutally violating the human rights of Palestinians for over 40 years. These abuses have taken many forms over the years. For example, Israel has been militarily occupying the West Bank and other Palestinian territories since 1967. Israeli soldiers patrol the streets in Palestinian cities and towns. They staff checkpoints where Palestinian civilians often wait for hours. They make nighttime arrests and detain Palestinians for months without charge. In addition, Israel has built over 100 Jewish-only colonies in the West Bank, calling them settlements, and illegally moving Jewish Israeli civilians onto land confiscated from Palestinian civilians. Another abuse is Israel's treatment of Palestinian refugees. 5 million Palestinian refugees have no place to go. International law calls for refugees to be allowed to return to their homes. However, Israel has never let any Palestinian refugees return. Finally, Israel treats Palestinian citizens of Israel proper as second-class citizens. Palestinian citizens are effectively blocked from important government subsidies. Palestinian communities in Israel receive far less government investment than their Jewish counterparts. And Palestinian citizens face Israeli laws which discriminate against them in many ways. Even though each year the United Nations admonishes Israel for its human rights abuses against Palestinians, nothing changes. Frustrated with international inaction, in 2005, 170 organizations from Palestinian civil society launched a movement, BDS, to economically pressure the Israeli government to respect their human rights. First, individuals and organizations are called to boycott Israel. Second, banks and financial bodies are called to divest from Israel. And third, countries are called to sanction Israel. The BDS movement has gained tons of momentum since it was launched. Countless companies, banks, church denominations, unions, political parties, performers, and others around the world have already signed on. But remember, BDS simply seeks respect for Palestinian human rights. So it will end. The pressure will end when 3 conditions are met. First, Israel must end its occupation and illegal colonization of Palestinian land. Second, Israel must allow for the return of Palestinian refugees or provide them compensation. And third, Israel must give Palestinian citizens of Israel equal rights. Each of the 3 demands of BDS is perfectly aligned with international law. So when you support BDS, you're supporting international law. For example, when BDS calls for an end to Israel's military occupation, it's calling for respect for the UN Charter. Similarly, when BDS calls for a solution for the Palestinian refugees, it's calling for respect of the 4th Geneva Convention. And when BDS calls for equal rights for Palestinians in Israel, it's calling for respect for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Even better, the demands of the BDS movement are perfectly aligned with Canada's official policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So when you join the BDS movement, you're participating in something which respects both international law as well as official Canadian policy. So give it a try. Jump in, support BDS, promote respect for human rights, and support a peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
You are watching the Palestinian Corner from Montreal, and our next excerpt is from a speech by a lawyer, Canadian lawyer, Dimitri Lascar, who successfully advocated for the Green Party of Canada to adopt the BDS after he returned from a trip to Israel and the Palestinian territories in the West Bank, where he represented a Canadian activist who was injured in the process during a conflict with the Israelis by a sniper, and also an Eritrean workers in Israel. His trip, he changed his ideas about the Middle East and boosted his fight.
I was approached and asked to run for the Green Party in the last election, which I did in London West. I accepted that invitation. Several months later, she came back to me and she said, I never expected the invitation. There's an opening for the position of justice critic. Will you take it? In between running for office last fall, and accepting the position of Justice Critic in the spring of this year, I was approached to represent a Palestinian Canadian by the name of Rehab Nazal. Rehab Nazal is an artist and an activist, an extraordinarily courageous woman who in Bethlehem, where she lived at the time, late last year, early this year, she was filming Israeli skunk trucks pouring noxious fluid on peaceful protesters in the homes of Palestinians in Bethlehem, and she was shot in the leg by an Israeli sniper. And I was asked to represent her in a pro bono capacity, not because we thought that there was some kind of litigation that could be pursued against the Israeli government, there really isn't, but hopefully that we could apply some pressure on the Canadian government to try to obtain some measure of relief for her. And so far we've been unsuccessful. The Canadian government has shown abject indifference to the wrong that was done to her. But I had to go to Israel in my capacity as a lawyer pursuing a class action on behalf of some Eritreans against a Canadian gold mining company. These Eritreans were trapped as refugees in Israel. And I went there to interview them in April of this year. And after I finished my interviews in Tel Aviv, I went to see Rehab in Bethlehem. And just so you sort of get a sense of what Rehab experienced, she took a photograph just before she was shot in the leg. And if you look here in the corner, this was a photograph she took. That's an Israeli sniper behind a wall, pointing a gun at her. Unfortunately, it's not very clear if you see. Right here. This is a sniper. If you see it electronically, it's much easier to make out. But the sniper, that was just before she got shot. She went down, and as I say, nothing has been done meaningfully by the Canadian government to vindicate her rights. I came and I visited her, and I visited the street, and she walked me through the scene of the crime. And then we went up and we saw this wall, which was just at the end of the street that I just showed you. And you'll see here a little orange window, and as she explained to me, occasionally that window opens up, and an Israeli sniper on the other side shoots at protesters in the streets in Bethlehem. And then adjacent to this wall, there was a building, a shell of a building, and we walked up into it. As I understand it, the building is not completed because the Israeli forces decided to use this building as a launching point for tear gas and other means of suppressing peaceful protest. And as we were walking through, Rehab showed me that all over the floor, here where you see, there were spent tear gas canisters. And so I gathered some up and I put them on the wall. And it's just a very small sample of what I saw. And we went down the street, there were many more. And she said, you know, they come and they clean these things up every 3 days. And then they have to come back again because there are so many being shot at the protesters. And as I was standing here looking at these tear gas canisters, I heard some playful voices over the wall. And I looked over the wall, and this is what I saw. And these children, it's a lasting image that I took back with me to Canada, and I have now resigned to the Green Party. That means a great deal to me. So I came back, and it just so happened at the time that I came back that we were in the middle, it was purely coincidence, of preparing for our convention in August. I return in May, and I put forward a resolution.
Hi, I'm really glad you're still with us, watching the Palestinian Corner from Montreal, لركن فلسطين من Montreal, le quoi Palestinian de Montréal. We come to the end of our program, hoping to see you next week.